Ever wondered what's really running through a woman's mind when the lights go down? I'm not talking about cliches or boring romance novels. I'm talking about the secret, spicy fantasies that she's never told anyone, not even herself. And today, I'm about to pull back the curtain and show you exactly what those naughty little thoughts look like. When it comes to intimacy, one of the most intriguing and secretly thrilling fantasies many women carry is the idea of power and control. Now, this isn't always about whips, chains, or the extreme versions you see in movies. Often, it's much more subtle, much more psychological, and far more exciting because it touches on something deeply human. The fantasy of power and control is about stepping into a dynamic where one person leads with authority while the other surrenders to the moment. And the reason it feels so naughty is because in everyday life, so many women are the ones holding everything together. They're making decisions, they're taking care of responsibilities, they're running businesses, families, schedules, and everything in between. So the bedroom becomes this one space where it feels intoxicating to let go of control and trust someone else to lead. Imagine this for a moment. A woman spends her day making decisions at work, managing deadlines, maybe even telling people what to do. She gets home and she's still carrying that mental load of dinner, laundry, social plans, or finances. In the fantasy, she doesn't have to carry any of that weight. She doesn't have to think, plan, or manage. Instead, someone else steps into that dominant role, takes the lead, and makes her feel safe enough to surrender. That surrender is not weakness, it's freedom. It's the freedom to switch off her mind, silence the inner checklist, and completely immerse herself in the raw intensity of the experience. For a lot of women, that switch is deeply arousing because it's so different from what they experience in daily life. On the flip side, this fantasy can sometimes play out in reverse. There are women who fantasize about being the one in control, about being the one who decides how things unfold. That's because power is a potent aphrodisiac. Being the one who commands attention, who sets the pace, who dictates what happens next, creates a rush of confidence and sensuality. It's not about cruelty or force. It's about stepping into a version of themselves that's bold, unapologetic, and fully in charge. For women who feel like they're constantly giving in to expectations or compromising in real life, this fantasy of being in control becomes a rebellion against those pressures. It's a way of reclaiming power and celebrating desire without apology. What makes this whole dynamic so naughty is the secrecy around it. Society has conditioned many women to believe that being good means being gentle, polite, restrained, or agreeable. So when a woman finds herself turned on by the idea of being pinned against the wall, or on the contrary, tying someone else up and calling the shots, it feels like she's crossing into forbidden territory. That taboo is what gives the fantasy its fire. The more off-limits it feels, the more liberating it becomes in her imagination. And in that imagined space, there's no judgment, no fear, and no consequence, just pure exploration of the sides of herself she might never reveal in daylight. At its core, the fantasy of power and control isn't really about violence or cruelty. It's about intensity, trust, and contrast. The contrast between strength and surrender, between authority and vulnerability, between leading and following, creates an electric charge that ordinary intimacy sometimes can't match. It amplifies every sensation, every touch, every look, because there's an underlying current of drama and anticipation. When a woman fantasizes about this, she's not just imagining sex, she's imagining a story, a stage where emotions and desires get to play bigger, louder, and bolder roles than they do in everyday life. And that's why the idea of power and control remains one of the most secretly thrilling fantasies, whispered about but deeply alive in the minds of so many women. One of the most powerful and secretly cherished fantasies many women carry is the idea of being desired relentlessly. This doesn't just mean being wanted, it means being wanted with a kind of raw, undeniable hunger that feels almost uncontrollable. It's the fantasy of someone looking at her as if she's the only person on earth, as if nothing else matters in that moment but touching her, holding her, being with her. It's not about a casual compliment or someone politely saying she's pretty, but about the intensity of being desired so deeply that it leaves no doubt in her mind. And what makes this fantasy so alluring is not only the passion it represents, but also the sense of validation it delivers on an emotional and psychological level. Every day, women navigate a world where they're constantly judged, measured, or compared. Social media, culture, and even day-to-day interactions often make women feel like they need to perform, to look a certain way, to be perfect in order to be attractive. Underneath all of that pressure, there is a longing to be wanted exactly as they are, without needing to filter, to pose, or to earn approval. The fantasy of being desired relentlessly removes all those barriers. It paints a picture where someone sees her in her rawest and most natural state and is completely captivated. This relentless desire isn't about her makeup, her outfit, or her curated Instagram look. It's about her presence, her energy, her being. In that fantasy, she doesn't have to try, she just has to exist, and that alone drives someone wild. Imagine a scenario where a man can't keep his hands off her, where every touch feels like it's charged with urgency, where he's not asking whether he's allowed to find her irresistible, but showing her through every action that he does. That kind of pursuit awakens something primal. It reassures her that she's not just attractive in theory, but magnetic in reality. And more importantly, it reassures her that she's not replaceable, not just another option. She becomes the fantasy itself, the object of desire so strong that it feels like it borders on obsession. And even though the word obsession can sound unhealthy in the real world, in fantasy it becomes intoxicating because it's not about control, it's about passion. This fantasy also connects to the deeper human need to feel chosen. In a society where dating apps make everyone feel like they're swiping through endless options, where attention can feel shallow and temporary, being desired relentlessly represents the opposite. It's about someone saying without words, "I want you and only you, and nothing else compares." That feeling of exclusivity, of being singled out as uniquely irresistible, gives a sense of security and empowerment. It makes intimacy feel less like a transaction and more like a devotion, a kind of sacred energy that turns an ordinary encounter into something unforgettable. At the same time, there's a playful naughtiness to this fantasy because it flips the usual script. Many women are taught to downplay their desirability, to not appear too much, to be modest, to avoid being the center of attention. So to imagine someone who is shamelessly, uncontrollably drawn to them feels like stepping into forbidden territory. It's a reversal of restraint. Instead of carefully managing appearances, she's the spark that ignites uncontrollable fire. And that is thrilling precisely because it's not polite, it's not restrained, it's not tame, it's messy, passionate, and real. What's interesting is that this fantasy isn't just about physical intimacy, it's also about emotional intensity. Being desired relentlessly means being wanted for more than just her body. It means being craved for her laugh, her quirks, her mind, her confidence, even her flaws. It's about someone who finds every little detail of who she is addictive. That level of desire sends the message that she doesn't have to hide any part of herself, because even the parts she thinks are unremarkable or imperfect are part of what makes her irresistible. That message is what makes the fantasy so powerful. The idea that nothing about her needs to be hidden or fixed in order to be worthy of complete, unrelenting passion. Another reason this fantasy lingers in the minds of so many women is that it taps into contrast. Life often demands composure, professionalism, restraint, patience. In daily life, most people aren't showing unfiltered desire, so when she imagines someone throwing all restraint out the window for her, it feels dangerous in the best possible way. It feels like stepping outside the ordinary rules of society and into a private world where passion rules everything. That contrast makes the fantasy hotter because it's a complete break from the calm, composed version of herself that the outside world usually sees. It's also worth noting that being desired relentlessly doesn't always mean aggressive pursuit. Sometimes it means tenderness with intensity. It can look like someone holding her face as though she's the most precious thing in the world. It can mean a kind of slow, focused attention that refuses to be distracted. Relentless doesn't always mean fast. Sometimes it means unyielding, a constant undercurrent of hunger that never fades, no matter how much time passes. In this way, the fantasy is less about a single moment and more about a consistency of passion, a steady fire that refuses to burn out. In essence, this fantasy is so intoxicating because it merges the primal with the emotional. It's not just about being physically wanted, but about being emotionally consumed, not just about passion, but about recognition. It's the reassurance that she's enough, more than enough, that she is the center of someone's attention without needing to fight for it or prove herself. And that relentless desire, whether expressed through urgency, tenderness, or playful pursuit, is one of the most deliciously naughty secrets many women keep close to their hearts. When it comes to fantasies, one of the most powerful forces that fuels them is the thrill of breaking rules. For many women, the idea of breaking taboos in the bedroom is what makes the experience so electric, because it taps into something forbidden, something they've been told not to think about, not to want, not to enjoy. From the time we're young, society hands us rules about what's acceptable and what's not, what makes a woman respectable and what makes her inappropriate, what behaviors are ladylike and what should never be spoken about in public. So when a woman allows herself, even in her private imagination, to step over those invisible lines, the excitement doubles. It's not just about the act itself, it's about the fact that she's not supposed to be doing it. The wrongness becomes part of what makes it feel so right. Think about how much of human desire is built around curiosity. Tell someone they shouldn't touch a button, and the first thing they want to do is press it. The same rule applies here. When women are constantly taught to behave, to keep their sexuality subtle, to avoid being too bold, too loud, too forward, it creates a natural hunger to explore the opposite. Breaking taboos gives her a taste of freedom, of rebellion, of daring to claim something that society tried to shame her away from. In that space of imagination, she doesn't have to be the good girl. She gets to be wild, unapologetic, and mischievous, and that feels intoxicating. These taboos can take many different shapes. For some women, it might be the fantasy of saying out loud the kinds of words or desires they would never voice in the light of day. The act of speaking things that feel too dirty, too explicit, too outrageous becomes exciting because it's breaking the social rule of silence around female desire. For others, it could be imagining scenarios or positions that feel too bold or daring compared to their everyday intimacy. It doesn't have to be extreme. It could be as simple as doing something in a place they're not supposed to, or imagining being caught in a moment they know is private. The tension between risk and secrecy amplifies the arousal because it's not just about pleasure, it's about transgression. At the heart of this fantasy is liberation. A woman may live her life within boundaries of reputation, culture, tradition, even family expectations. In her fantasy, she can tear through those boundaries without consequence. She can imagine herself doing things that would shock her friends, surprise her partner, or even scare her in real life. But in fantasy, she is safe, and that safety allows her to dance with danger without being hurt by it. That's why the breaking of taboos is so irresistible. It's a playground where she can test limits and taste forbidden fruit without judgment or punishment. It's important to understand that taboos aren't the same for every woman. What feels rebellious for one might feel ordinary to another. For some, role-playing a character that's bolder, more dominant, or more provocative than they'd ever be in real life is their version of taboo. For others, it might be exploring fantasies that challenge traditional norms about what sex should look like. Some women find excitement in imagining scenarios that flip power roles, where they act out dynamics that contradict the image they present to the world. The beauty of fantasy is that it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. It only has to awaken something inside her. And the very act of imagining what she shouldn't imagine makes the fantasy burn brighter. What's fascinating is how breaking taboos blends both the emotional and the physical. Physically, there's the thrill of trying something new, of stepping outside the predictable script. Emotionally, there's the rush of freedom, the sweet taste of rebellion, and the satisfaction of claiming ownership over her own desire. That emotional charge is what makes taboo fantasies so much more powerful than simply trying new positions or adding a little variety. It's not just about doing something different, it's about defying a rule. Every time she imagines stepping over that line, it's like declaring, I refuse to be boxed in. I refuse to be defined by what I'm told I should want. This is why even simple fantasies, when framed as taboo, can carry enormous weight. Take, for example, the idea of having intimacy in a public space where there's a chance of being discovered. The act itself isn't necessarily revolutionary, but the idea of being caught, of doing something she knows is not allowed, makes it 10 times more exciting. The risk heightens every sensation because the brain is wired to respond more strongly when there's danger involved. That doesn't mean she wants to be reckless in real life, but it means her imagination thrives on the tension between safety and danger, right and wrong, private and forbidden. Breaking taboos also allows a woman to explore sides of herself she doesn't normally get to show. Maybe she's the professional, the mother, the leader, the caregiver, the person everyone depends on to be calm and composed. But in her fantasy, she gets to be the opposite. She gets to be messy, outrageous, greedy, playful, and unfiltered. She gets to enjoy herself without apology, and she gets to express desires that, if spoken aloud in real life, might shock people. That expression is part of what makes fantasy so empowering. It's not just about what happens physically, it's about what it symbolizes. It's about being unshackled, even if only in her mind, from all the restrictions placed on her by others. And perhaps the most powerful aspect of breaking taboos in fantasy is that it lets a woman take control of the very things that were once used to control her. For centuries, female desire was treated as something shameful, something to be hidden, something dangerous. So when she imagines herself crossing those lines, owning those desires, and turning that shame into pleasure, she's not just indulging a fantasy, she's reclaiming her power. She's turning don't into I will and shouldn't into I want to. That's why this particular fantasy feels so intoxicating, because it's not only about sex, it's about liberation, rebellion, and the sweetest kind of freedom. When it comes to the private world of female fantasies, one of the most exciting playgrounds is roleplay and the use of alter egos. There's something deeply enticing about stepping outside of the self that everyone else sees and slipping into a version of yourself that is bolder, freer, more mysterious, or more daring than you normally allow yourself to be. For many women, roleplay isn't just about costumes or scripts, it's about accessing hidden sides of their identity, sides that remain tucked away in everyday life. The fantasy lies not only in what happens during the role play itself, but in the transformation, in the thrill of becoming someone else while still being fully herself. That paradox, that balance of authenticity and performance, creates an experience that feels uniquely naughty and liberating. In everyday life, women carry roles already. daughter, mother, partner, professional, friend. These roles come with responsibilities and expectations, and while they shape who she is, they can also box her in. Roleplay in fantasy is different because it removes those external expectations and replaces them with chosen identities that exist purely for pleasure. In one scenario, she can be the seductress who walks into a room with all the confidence in the world, commanding attention and unapologetically taking what she wants. In another, she can be the shy character coaxed out of her shell by a partner who slowly draws out her hidden desires. These aren't just games, they're ways of exploring sides of herself she may never get to explore in real life. It's permission to be multidimensional, to exaggerate one part of her personality, or to try on a completely new one without fear of judgment. The costumes, accents, or scripts often associated with roleplay are not what make it powerful, they're props. What makes roleplay truly electrifying is the psychological shift. When a woman puts herself into the mindset of an alter ego, she lifts the weight of her own insecurities. She no longer has to be the version of herself who worries about how her hair looks, whether she's moving in the right way, or whether her body meets someone else's expectations. As an alter ego, she's free from that self-consciousness because she's playing a character. And ironically, in playing a character, she often finds her truest sense of freedom. The alter ego can be wild without shame, dominant without guilt, submissive without fear, playful without restraint. It's a way to experiment with behaviors and desires that may feel too intimidating to express under her real name. One of the reasons roleplay fantasies are so popular is because they allow women to create a sense of novelty without needing new partners. Long-term relationships can sometimes struggle with keeping intimacy exciting, not because love fades, but because routines settle in. The thrill of roleplay is that it injects freshness into something familiar. When her partner suddenly becomes the stranger at the bar who flirts with her, or she becomes the mysterious character who shows up with a smirk and a secret, the rules of reality shift. They're no longer the couple who already know each other's habits and patterns. They're new people meeting for the first time, and that spark of novelty reignites chemistry in ways that feel intoxicating. For single women, the fantasy works the same way. It's not about the reality of who they are today, but about the story they can write in their minds, with characters and plots that have no limits. Roleplay is also tied to storytelling, and storytelling has always been central to human desire. A fantasy about roleplay often isn't just about the act itself, but the narrative surrounding it. She might imagine a scenario where she's the strict teacher, the daring adventurer, the untouchable boss, or even the undercover spy. The roles add context, and that context heightens arousal because it creates a sense of drama. Suddenly, intimacy isn't just about physical connection, it's about a story unfolding with tension, climax, and resolution. That narrative dimension makes the experience deeper and more engaging because it appeals not only to the body but also to the imagination. And when the imagination is turned on, every touch and word feels magnified, amplified by the story her mind is spinning. What makes this especially naughty is that alter egos often embrace qualities women are discouraged from showing openly. Society often tells women not to be too aggressive, not to be too demanding, not to take up too much space. In roleplay, those rules don't apply. She can step into a persona that thrives on being commanding, unapologetic, or even mischievous. Or on the flip side, she can explore vulnerability in a way that feels safe, pretending to be someone who is shy, nervous, or hesitant because she knows she's in control of the game. Both extremes offer a sense of freedom because they're choices made willingly, not roles imposed by the outside world. That agency makes the fantasy even more powerful. She's not being boxed into a role. She's choosing one, playing with it, and discarding it whenever she wants. Another layer to this is the intimacy created through secrecy. When a woman imagines herself in a role-play fantasy, she's engaging in something private that others may never know about. That secrecy heightens the excitement because alter egos are often treated like hidden treasures. They're the secret selves that rarely get to step out into the open, and the act of bringing them to life, even in imagination, feels deliciously forbidden. It's the thrill of having a secret identity, a double life where rules don't apply, and pleasure is the only law. That secrecy also strengthens connection in real life when shared with a partner. By revealing an alter ego, she's revealing a side of herself that most people will never see, which creates a bond of intimacy that's deeper than ordinary interactions. The versatility of roleplay makes it endlessly appealing. It can be soft and playful, or it can be dark and daring. It can be about stepping into power or surrendering it, about exploring dominance or submission, about testing out fantasies that may never happen in real life but feel exhilarating in imagination. That flexibility means there's no limit to what roleplay can offer, because the possibilities are as endless as the characters her mind can create. It's not about being fake, it's about uncovering the real parts of herself that stay hidden under the weight of daily roles. And in doing so, roleplay becomes not just a game of make-believe, but a window into deeper truths about her desires, her confidence, and her freedom. When most people hear the word naughty, their minds immediately jump to something wild, dark, or rebellious. But for many women, one of the most deliciously exciting fantasies isn't about being extreme at all. It's about romantic mischief, that sweet spot where playfulness and passion collide. This kind of fantasy thrives on spontaneity, light-heartedness, and the joy of doing something that feels a little bit sneaky, a little bit against the rules, but still rooted in connection and affection. It's not about pain, punishment, or even power struggles, but about creating moments that feel thrilling because they're unpredictable, unplanned, and filled with fun. Romantic mischief is essentially the spark of breaking routine while keeping intimacy warm, tender, and deeply exciting. For many women, the idea of mischief in intimacy is about returning to a sense of childlike adventure where fun and danger overlap just enough to create a rush. It could be as simple as imagining sneaking away at a dinner party and sharing stolen kisses in a hidden corner, giggling because someone might walk in. It could be daydreaming about a surprise moment of passion in a place that feels inappropriate but safe enough to be tempting. The thrill isn't necessarily in being caught. The thrill is in almost being caught, in knowing that the possibility of discovery hovers in the background, turning every touch into something electrified. That mix of romance and rebellion creates an energy that makes ordinary intimacy feel extraordinary. Romantic mischief is also about playfulness between two people. So much of adult life is serious. Deadlines, bills, family responsibilities, endless to-do lists. Fantasy is the place where all of that weight disappears, and suddenly intimacy doesn't have to be heavy or structured. It can be light, teasing, even silly. A woman might imagine her partner surprising her by pulling her close in the middle of a mundane moment, or whispering something daring in her ear while they're out in public, a secret code that only the two of them share. These little acts of mischief spark laughter, anticipation, and desire all at once. They remind her that passion doesn't always have to be solemn or serious. Sometimes the sexiest thing in the world is the ability to play together like co-conspirators in a secret adventure. Part of what makes this fantasy so appealing is the sense of rebellion against routine. In long-term relationships, intimacy can sometimes slip into patterns, not because love is gone, but because life has a way of pulling people into schedules that leave little room for surprises. Romantic mischief is the antidote to monotony. It introduces novelty without needing to change partners or chase something extreme. a spontaneous kiss in an elevator, a daring touch under the table, or even a playful role reversal where she takes the lead in an unexpected way can reignite the fire. It doesn't have to be elaborate. The simplicity of mischief is what makes it effective. It's about interrupting the ordinary with something extraordinary, breaking the expected with something deliciously unexpected. Another layer of this fantasy is secrecy. Mischief often happens in whispers, in glances, in moments that feel private even in public. Women fantasize about these moments because secrecy creates intimacy. When two people share a secret, even a small one, it bonds them in a way that feels unbreakable. Imagine the rush of laughing together after doing something a little daring, or the thrill of holding a shared secret memory that no one else knows about. That sense of just us is what turns a playful moment into something deeply intimate. Romantic mischief isn't just about passion, it's about connection. It's about two people becoming co-authors of a story that belongs only to them. It also taps into the longing for spontaneity. In a world where so much is scheduled and planned, the fantasy of mischief is refreshing because it throws planning out the window. She doesn't have to prepare, dress up, or script the perfect scene. The excitement comes from the surprise, from the idea that passion could erupt at any moment, in any place. That unpredictability makes her feel alive, desired, and free. It's the difference between waiting for intimacy to happen and having it sweep her off her feet unexpectedly. That feeling of being caught off guard by passion is what makes mischief so magnetic. There's also an emotional sweetness to this kind of fantasy. Unlike darker or heavier fantasies, romantic mischief often carries laughter with it. It's not just about pleasure, it's about joy. A couple sneaking kisses, running down a hallway, or collapsing into giggles after nearly being caught is experiencing something that strengthens their bond. It's intimacy layered with humor, which makes it feel sustainable and deeply human. For women, this combination of passion and play often feels like the most nourishing kind of intimacy. It's not only about being desired, but also about being adored, cherished, and seen as someone worth breaking the rules with. At its core, romantic mischief celebrates the balance between innocence and naughtiness. It's not about pushing boundaries to extremes, but about bending them just enough to feel daring. It's about making love feel like an adventure rather than a chore, a secret mission rather than a scheduled task. And what makes it so powerful in fantasy is that it reintroduces the magic of unpredictability into something that might otherwise feel predictable. It's not grand gestures that fuel these fantasies, but small, stolen moments where romance meets rebellion and passion wears a mischievous smile. So, when we peel back the layers, these so-called naughty fantasies aren't really about being wild for the sake of shock value. They're about freedom. They're about being able to let go of control, to feel relentlessly desired, to break rules that were never meant to cage us, to slip into alter egos that set us free, and to play with the kind of mischief that keeps passion alive. These fantasies remind us that intimacy isn't just physical, it's psychological, it's emotional, and it's deeply human. And maybe the real secret is this: women don't just want to be touched, they want to be seen, understood, and given permission to explore every side of themselves without judgment. When that happens, intimacy stops being routine and becomes something unforgettable, something playful, something electric. And the truth is, the more we allow space for these desires to be acknowledged, the stronger, deeper, and more alive our connections become.